Hello friends and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. So glad you can be with us because we're continuing our series on makeup secrets for beautiful eyes for those of us with mature skin who are in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. Today we're going to specifically focus on how to lift that eye area. Some of us were born with hooded eyes, sometimes they've developed a little bit later in life, and some of us have downturned or droopy eyes as well. So we're going to be talking about some tips and techniques that can help our eyes look their very best. For those of you who are new to the channel, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Elise. I'm a professional working makeup artist who's passionate about helping those of us who are 50, 60, 70, and beyond look on the outside how we feel on the inside, so we can look and feel our confident best. Over the next Thursdays, and next few weeks, next few months, we're going to be focusing on a variety of makeup and beauty topics, and I hope you'll be with us. And I hope you'll subscribe. If you want to subscribe and get regular notifications of when those videos are coming up, please do also hit that bell icon in addition to subscribing, and that way you'll be automatically notified when a new video is available to you every Thursday. And in addition to the tutorials that we'll be doing and information on new products and new makeup and different techniques, I'm also going to be bringing in other women who are 50 plus, and we're going to be focusing on their issues and challenges and coming up with some techniques that may work for them, which I hope will be helpful for you as well. At least that's the game plan for right now. Thanks again for being with us, and I think we want to dive right in here shortly. But before we do, I want to just quickly acquaint you with a story that occurred, I guess it was about 5 years ago now. I was working at a department store makeup counter for a major cosmetics brand, and a woman came in by the name of Marcia, who was in her late 40s. And Marcia wanted to have a full makeover done because she was getting married in a few months and she wanted to look beautiful for her wedding. Well, who among us would not want that? So I was delighted to be able to help her, and I was scurrying around to different areas of the counter grabbing various products for us to work with. And occasionally I'd look over and see her sort of eyeing herself in the mirror, seeing what I was doing and what techniques I was using. And at the end of our session together, she said two things that were very interesting. The first thing she said was, and she looked at me rather sheepishly when she started to talk about this, she said, I don't know if I really should be doing this, but do you suppose you could do my makeup at my wedding? And I was so moved and so touched that she would ask, and actually would have done it in a heartbeat, but we were moving, so I could not do it. But the second thing she said really struck me, and a light bulb really went off for me, because she said, my college roommate taught me how to do my makeup, and I've been doing the same thing ever since. Does that sound familiar? I think for a lot of us, it's absolutely true. We maybe learned how to do makeup from a girlfriend, or perhaps our sister when we were in junior high or high school, or perhaps we just learned from looking at the pages of 17 magazine. But pretty much most of us, and I've worked with hundreds of women over the past 6 years, and it's been almost universally true that most of us are still using the same techniques that we used in our 20s and 30s, which don't quite serve us as well as they used to. And why wouldn't we be using those same techniques? Because how do we know what to do differently? Frankly, there's not a whole lot out there for us. That's why I'm so passionate about this work, about helping to offer techniques that will work for us now. So let's dive in. I'm also going to be using a makeup mirror, so forgive me from time to time if I look down here, because I do need a magnifying mirror, and that's something else that maybe some of you can identify with as well. So as you can see, my eyebrows are quite sparse. There's some white hair in there, and there's some gray hair in there as well. And the tails don't quite come down as far as they used to as well. Maybe some of you experience that also. So what I'm going to do first is put some eyeshadow base or eye primer over my entire eyelid. The product I'm going to be using, and there are a number of good products on the market, product I'm going to be using is one called Decay. And this is in the shade Eden. Urban Decay does make several different shades of primer, from lighter to darker. They also make a clear primer, but I am using one that matches my eye color. And there's several reasons for using an eye primer or an eye base. The first one is, and as you can probably see, this is the case for me. I have some vein issues going on here in my eyes. I have a lot of discoloration on my eyelid. So by putting an eye base or primer over my entire eye area, from the lashes on up to my eyebrow, that's going to cover up that discoloration. And that's why I'm using a color that matches my skin tone rather than a clear eye base or eye primer. So I'm going to do that to cover up that discoloration on my eyelids, because that will give me an even base on which to put eyeshadow. And that's important. You know how you can prime a room first when you paint it? That's kind of the same concept that we're going with here. We want to even out that entire skin tone, so when we put on the eyeshadow, it's not darker in some places and lighter in others. The other thing with eye primer that is really important for some of us, many of us have oily eyelids, and oddly enough, as my skin has gotten drier, my eyelids have gotten oilier. I don't quite understand that, but maybe that's happened for some of you as well. So I have very oily eyelids, and what happens to me is if I don't use eye base or eye primer, within literally an hour of putting on eyeshadow, that eyeshadow will crease and smudge. I remember when I was younger and in high school and college wearing eyeshadow, I would put concealer or foundation on my eyelid, hoping that that would keep the eyeshadow from creasing or smudging, and it never worked, for me at least. Now, some of you, if you don't have a really oily eyelid, you probably can get away with just using concealer. But if you have an oilier eyelid, or if you want to ensure that your eyeshadow stays in place without budging for literally until you take it off for 24 hours if need be, I don't think that's going to happen for most of us, but it really does work to keep that eyeshadow in place. So I'm going to take a little dab of this, and you can put it on obviously with a brush or with your fingers, and I'm just going to dab a little bit on here. And then I'm going to, as I said, pull it across my eyelid gently from the lash line to all the way up to the eyebrow. And I'm going to make sure it also goes right along the edge, bottom edge of my eyelids, where I'm going to eventually put some eyeliner. Okay, and as you see, I'm not trying not to tug or pull too much. And by the way, just as a quick aside, when I was taking off my eye makeup, I put some eye makeup remover in a very gentle eye makeup remover. It's actually micellar water. And I soaked this entire pad and then put it against my eye and just held it there for just a few seconds. And that helped the makeup dissolve a little bit, so it would be easier to remove, so I wouldn't have to do as much tugging and pulling at that delicate skin around the eye area. So if you can approach taking off your eye makeup that way, it's going to be a lot easier on your eyes. Well, as you can see from putting on that eye base and eye primer, there's a lot less discoloration in my eyelid area. So I'm going to let that primer dry. And while I do that, I'm going to put on my eyebrow. Now, there are a lot of different ways you can use eyebrow products. In fact, in the very first video in this series, it was all about eyebrows. So if you need to refer back to that, please feel free to do that. There is a link in the description box, as I think I mentioned earlier. I'm going to use a gel. But before I use the gel, I'm going to take an eyebrow pencil, and I'm going to take a thin one, and many brands make eyebrow pencils of either a thin variety like this, some of them make a thicker variety, but there are several brands that are really known for eyebrow products. And at the drugstore, there is a brand called NYX, NYX, that makes a lot of different eyebrow products. On the higher end, there's Anastasia of Beverly Hills, and also a company called Benefit that makes a lot of really good eyebrow products. Probably every brand makes at least 1 or 2 eyebrow products, but the brands I mentioned make probably the largest variety of products, from pencils to powders to pomades or creams. So the reason I'm using an eyebrow pencil first before I use the gel is that I want to fill in a pattern for my eyebrow. That to me just makes it a little bit easier when I go to put the gel, or perhaps if you use powder or a pencil. But I'm going to outline where I want my eyebrow to be along the top and where I want it to be along the bottom. I also have gotten a little bit scraggly along the top of my eyebrow, and by using a pencil, that fills that area in a little bit more effectively than if I just use the gel. Also want to mention that many of you probably know this trick, but it's important to know where your eyebrow should stop and start. So where it should start is if you take a pencil like this and put it up along the edge of your nose and go straight up. That's where you want your brow to start. And probably the more important thing for most of us is where our brow should end. And if you put that same pencil along the outer edge of your nose, go to the outer edge of your eye, where that pencil lands is where that brow should end. And it's important to bring our brows down that far so they really frame our face, but important not to bring it down too far or even below that area, because then that pulls our eyes down so it looks like our eyes are drooping a little bit. So there's that important sweet point of where to bring that brow down. So I'm going to just take a moment and fill in the top area of these brows. Also on my other brow, I have a bit of a scar, and that is always a little bit trickier to fill in with gel or powder, because it's very difficult for products to adhere to scar area. So a pencil or a pomade or cream tends to work a lot better. And by the way, I won't mention how I got that scar. It was in my 20s. It's actually not a very interesting story anyway. Okay, so I've just filled in that pattern along the top and bottom of my brow. It doesn't have to be perfect, obviously, because I'm going to take my eyebrow gel, and I'll show you what I'm using. This is the eyebrow gel product that I'm using. As you can see, it has a very tiny little brush on it. This is made by Charlotte Tilbury, called Legendary Eyes. And eyebrow gels sometimes are clear, and if you use a clear kind, what the gel is doing is probably holding down any wiry brows that we may have, which again is something that does start to happen a little bit later. And oddly enough, I have wiry brows in one eyebrow and not the other. I don't quite understand how that works, but that's just the way it is. So I'm going to take that brow gel and I'm just going to apply it, right along the brow area. And the wonderful thing about this brow gel is that it not only applies color, but it also applies some gel substance, so it keeps the eyebrows in place a little bit better. And I'm just going to go over that one more time because, our eyebrows are not twins but sisters, and I want to have this eyebrow matching the other one a little bit more effectively. Okay, I think that is going to work a little bit better. So I also want to mention the tool that I'm using, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but this is an Eyebrow Spoolie, and it's like a mascara wand, and it's really an essential tool for eyebrows, because what you do then is you take the spoolie after you've used your powder or your gel or your pomade and run it through, and as you can see, that's gotten darker. It's taken off any excess product, so it makes your brows look a lot more natural. And why is it so important to do brows? Well, to fill them in is extremely important because as we get older, we do lose the color in our brows. Sometimes we get some gray hairs, sometimes some white hairs. And because of that, we lose contrast between our brows and our skin. And there was actually a very interesting research study done not too long ago that concluded that one of the things that makes us more attractive to other people is if we have more facial contrast. And we lose contrast when our brows get lighter. So by filling in our brows, we create more contrast. Also, the brows serve to frame our eyes, really draw attention to our eyes, which is really important if we want to improve the look of our eyes and really make them the star of the show. So eyebrows are really important. I don't know if you've ever seen that picture of Anne Hathaway that's been around the internet, which shows her with and without any eyebrows. It really gives you an understanding of how important eyebrows are to how we look. And frankly, if I could recommend any one thing for those of us who are 50 plus to do that can help them almost more than anything else, it would be filling in our eyebrows. When I have classes that I'm teaching, I always like to demonstrate that on a volunteer in the class. And what I'm going to do is, on top of that eye base that I put on, I'm going to add a layer of translucent loose powder. And it doesn't have to be loose powder, it can be pressed powder. But I'm using translucent loose powder. That's kind of a tongue twister to say, as a matter of fact. I'm putting a little bit on my brush. I'm tapping off my brush, and I'm just going to put it gently all over that eye area, from the lash line all the way up to the eyebrow. Now, the reason for this is that I'm going to be using a powder eyeshadow shortly. And with a powder eyeshadow, if I were to just put the powder on top of the eye base, which is a cream, so we have two different formulations, that shadow would just tug and pull a little bit because the powder would be fighting against the cream. By putting on just a little bit of powder along the eye area here, that means that when I apply that eyeshadow, it's going to glide on smoothly. And frankly, it may be a little extra time to do it, but it's going to make the application of eyeshadow so much easier. Trust me on that. So we've got a little bit of powder, and you don't need a lot, just a little bit over that entire eyelid area. And I can just feel how this brush is now gliding along in that eyelid area. I'm going to move this powder because I do not want to hit it and have it go everywhere. So I'm going to move it off to the side. The next thing I'm going to do is fill in this area with eye shadow. And I'm going to use two different kinds of eyeshadow. And this is going to be a different application than we're used to doing. What I'm going to do first, which is very different from probably what most of us grew up doing, and maybe what most of us are still doing now, is I'm going to take a lighter color product and put it on the eyelid area. I'm going to show you what I'm using. This is a product by Laura Geller. She is a makeup artist. Let me do it so you can see it a little bit better. This is something called Baked Highlighter Duo. It has two different colors in it, as you saw. One is a light vanilla shade, and one is called Portofino. The vanilla is a matte color. The Portofino has a little bit of glow to it. Not glitter, but a little bit of glow. And actually, I like to use that as a highlighter. It's really beautiful. In fact, I did use that today as a highlighter. But I'm going to take that vanilla color, and I'm just going to take a little bit of that on actually the same brush that I used for the translucent powder. And I wish I could tell you what brush this is, but it's so old that there's not even a name left on it. But as you can see, it's a little bit wider and thicker than a lot of other brushes. And this is a great kind of brush to apply something all over the lid area. So I'm going to tap off any excess. And by the way, every once in a while, I see people who, instead of tapping, they will blow off the excess, which, as you can imagine, is not the most sanitary thing to do. So tapping off is always a good decision. So I'm going to take that lighter color, and I'm going to go all the way across my lid area. Now, as you can see, it's not an optic white, it's sort of a soft vanilla, which is what we want. And if you have a skin tone that's darker than mine, you probably want to go with a slightly darker color, more of a beigey vanilla color, or because this would probably stand out too much if you have a medium to darker skin tone. So you want to go lighter on the lid area, but not so light if you have a darker skin tone than I do. Okay, as you can probably see, that looks a little bit lighter. Now the reason for this really goes back to color theory, which we're probably all familiar with from high school or lower grade art classes. And the theory is that things that are light come forward and things that are dark recede. And we all know the experience of walking into a darker room and feeling that it's smaller than it actually is. And if we want to make a room look bigger, we always put lighter paint on it. Well, the same holds true with eyes. What we want to do is make those eyes come forward and look bigger, which is why we're putting a lighter color on that lid area. I'm going to put a lighter color in two other places on the lid. I'm going to take a tiny little brush, and this is a Robert Jones brush number 14, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to put a little bit of that same vanilla color in two places. I'm going to put it under the arch of my eyebrow because that helps lift the eyes, and I'm also going to take a little bit and I'm going to put it in the inner corner of my eye because that is an area, it's sort of a cave-like area. It usually is quite dark for most of us. And by lightening and brightening, we can, again, make our eyes look a little bit bigger. I also like to put a little bit of it right under my bottom lashes to lighten up that area as well. Okay, so those are the places to put the lighter shadow. I'm next going to take a medium color, or we usually call it a transition color in the makeup business. And I'm going to put that medium color in the crease area of my eyes. And I want to show you what I'm using. This is the brush I'm using, which is a brush that's no longer available, unfortunately. But the kind of brush to use is one that's like this, that has a little bit of length to it and is not terribly firm. As you can see, this has a little bit of give to it, and that's what we want to go with. The eyeshadow that I'm using is an eyeshadow by a company called Juvia's Place. It is I would say a mid-level in terms of cost eyeshadow, although if you go to their website, they often have incredible sales and you can get incredible bargains. So this price-wise falls somewhere in between drugstore and high-end eyeshadow. This is an all matte palette, which is what I love about it. It's difficult to find all matte palettes, but the reason I'm using all matte is that if you use any kind of satin, shimmer, or glitter, which can be absolutely gorgeous, and certainly if you want to go that route, that is absolutely fine. But in terms, again, of color theory, what happens with a glitter or a shimmer or a very satiny color is that it emphasizes that area, it brings attention to that area. And if we have crepiness in that area, or any other thing that we're not particularly fond of having a lot of attention drawn to, then using matte will work a little bit better for us. It won't automatically draw more attention to that area. So I'm going to use all matte today, and I'll show you the colors I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using the two lightest colors, the one in the middle bottom and the one on the top row to the far, let's see, whoops, we're going to go this way. Sorry, we're going to go this way. This is the other one I'm going to be using. I'm actually going to be combining those two. Later, I'm going to be using a darker color, and I'm going to be using that color in the top row middle and sort of mixing it with that lighter. There are two blacks in this eyeshadow palette, one at the very bottom, which is the blackest black, and then one in that top row as well. So I'm going to mix a little bit of that dark color in the middle, dark brown color, with a little bit of that lighter black. All right, so first let's do that transition color or crease color. I'm going to again take those two lightest colors. I'm going to tap a little bit on my brush from both, and then I'm going to tap off my brush. And by the way, one of the reasons I love this particular eyeshadow place, Juvia's place called Warrior 2, is that it is highly pigmented, but it doesn't have a lot of kick up. It's not terribly powdery, and that, I think, makes putting on eyeshadow a whole lot easier. Now, normally, I will tell you that I normally apply eyeshadow before putting on any other makeup. And that's because that no matter how careful you are, or no matter how good an eyeshadow you have, you're going to get some fallout from eyeshadow. So rather than putting my other makeup on, like foundation first, and then putting on eyeshadow, which means I'll get some fallout, and then I'll have to clean it up and then sometimes reapply that other makeup, I'd prefer to just put the eyeshadow on first, clean up any excess, and then apply my other makeup. Now here's what I'm doing a little bit differently than what most of us have been doing. I'm taking this transition color, I'm starting in the middle where I still have most of the product on my brush when I first start, obviously, and I am bringing it out. I'm not going around the curve of that crease area. What I'm doing is bringing it straight out from that middle section. And you'll notice I am using a little bit of a windshield wiper motion, but I'm also using small circular motions. The reason for that is that if we have any crepiness in that area, and I certainly do, if we just use windshield wiper motions, we may miss some little folds of skin. So by using these circular motions, you can really fill in that area. And then I'm going to bring it straight down. I'm going to add a little bit more product to my brush and go a little bit over this, and again bring it straight down to my eyelash area so there is some continuity. Now basically the shape I'm creating is almost a backward 7. Right? So what that does, obviously, is bringing it across rather than following that curve. If you follow that curve, it tends to bring the eye down. And so we're playing a little smoke and mirror. That's what I'm going to use to apply a little bit darker color, and I'll show you what that brush is. This is a Morphe, and I don't have my glasses, so I will put the number of the brush in the description box below. But as you can see, it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit denser and firmer, and that's what we want. So I'm taking that darkest brown color and just a touch of the lighter black color, putting it on that brush, and then what I'm doing is I'm holding this up just so, because there is some crepiness here, I'm holding this up, so not real taut, but just taut enough so I avoid the crepey area, and I'm putting that darker color again on that area where we just went across on the outer part of the eye, and then down onto the eyelid and slightly into the lash area on the outer part of the eye. Okay. All right, now I'm going to take that blending brush. This happens to be another Morphe brush. Again, I'll put the brush number in the description box below. But as you can see, it's fluffier and larger. And if you have a smaller area in your eyelid area than I do, you probably want to go with a smaller blending brush. I have a pretty good size area here, so I'm using this larger brush. And what I'm doing, as you can see, is I'm going up. I am bringing that color up and over slightly. And of course the key, as you probably know with eyeshadow, is to blend and then blend again and then blend again. What we don't want is any hard edges or strong demarcation. Now once I've pretty well blended that in, I'm going to just go all the way up, because I have very little product left on my brush. I'm just going to go all the way up to my eyebrow area and blend that. All right. I think we're pretty well blended, so there's no heavy area of demarcation. Now, next thing is eyeliner. And actually our next video is going to be all about eyeliner, so I won't go into a lot of detail now. But one of the things I like to do is actually use my eyeshadow as my eyeliner. So I'm going to take, and I've found recently that this brush works really quite well. This is another Robert Jones brush. As you can see, it has a flat top, and that flat top gives us a lot of area. So it gives us a lot of coverage faster than, for instance, a small angled brush might. But you can certainly use a small angled brush. I love the fact that if I use eyeshadow as eyeliner, I'm doing double duty and don't really need to buy a separate eyeliner, although occasionally I do buy separate eyeliners. But great way to save money, right? Multitask with our makeup products. So I have the dark brown and a tiny little bit of black on this flat pencil. And what I'm going to do is just stamp it across the base of my eyelid right next to my lashes. And it's almost just like, well, I think stamping is the closest description I can give to this. Now the reason I really like, and I'm going to do a second application, the reason I particularly like doing this is that it really gives a very soft look. Plus, a lot of us have issues with seeing terribly well, or maybe our hands aren't quite as steady as they used to be. And by using a brush like this rather than an eyeliner pencil or pen, it's far more forgiving. So even if I make a little mistake, I can just simply go with the brush and blend it out across my lid. Or I could go in with a Q-tip and also just blend it across. You can see what a difference eyeliner makes. It's really incredible to give a little bit more definition to that eye area. The other thing I love about going with a dark brown as opposed to black, which probably is what most of us have done most of our lives, it's a little bit of a softer look. Some of us can still carry off that black eyeliner look, but for many of us, a softer, more natural look is a little bit more flattering. So we've got the eyeliner on, and I do talk about putting eyeliner on the lower area as well. And I think we've all seen those instances, and it can look gorgeous, where there is eyeliner, dark eyeliner, all the way across the bottom. And that can look beautiful in a smoky eye kind of situation. But what that does is it really makes our eyes look smaller by closing them in a little bit. So I'm going to just put eyeliner on the outer bottom third of my eyes. I'm going to be using a eyeliner pencil to use under my eye on the outer third of my eye. You can use anything for eyeliner that works well for you. For me, pencil just works better on the lower eyeliner area. So I'm going to take this particular product. This is a Clinique Quickliner Intense Eyeliner Pencil, and it has a smudger on the other end, which is going to come in handy. And if you don't have a smudger, those Q-tips can work wonders as well. So I'm going to line just the outer third of my eye, and I'm going to just gently hold this bottom area of my eye so I don't have any crepiness interfering, hopefully. And I'm just going to go along this bottom outer third, and then I'm going to bring it up slightly, just a little upward flick at the end. And that's obviously, I'm working against gravity here and trying to lift that eye area even more. And then I'm going to take my pencil smudger on the other end. I'm going to smudge out that line just so it's a little softer. And this particular eyeliner that I'm using is a little lighter than the eyeliner that I used along the top lash, which I think for me at least gives a softer, more flattering look to the eye. Now I do want you to take a look before I use mascara to show you the difference mascara can make between this eye with no mascara and this eye with mascara. It does make a huge difference. And in order to show you the best way to make that mascara really stand out and have more volume, I'm going to use this little instrument of torture, which we're probably all familiar with, an eyelash curler. And you can be even more effective with an eyelash curler if it's heated. Now, I've heard that some people do use blow dryers to heat an eyelash curler. That makes me a little bit nervous that that might get a little bit too hot. But I heard a trick the other day, which I wanted to share with you, which I thought was really interesting. I haven't used it yet, but I plan to use it. And that is, if you put your eyelash curler in your bra when you first start your makeup, by the time you get to the point where you're putting on your mascara, it will be warmed up, and that will help the curl be even better than it would be otherwise. So as I say, I'm going to try that and see how it works, but the person that I heard it from absolutely swore by it as a method. So I'm going to take the eyelash curler and I'm going to place it as close to the bottom of my lashes as I possibly can without pinching my eyelid area, and I know that's tricky, but here's the important thing I'm going to do that makes a big difference. I'm going to now lift my arm and lift my elbow. That will help the curl get even better. Then I'm going to stair-step my way up my lashes and hold for another 5 seconds as I stair-step up. And then I'm going to stair-step up one more time, hold for another 5 seconds, until I get to the very end of my lashes. And I hope you can tell what a difference just using an eyelash curler has made in how those lashes appear. They are definitely more curled than they were before using that eyelash curler. Then I'm going to go in with mascara. And I have particularly sensitive eyes, so a lot of mascaras will irritate my eyes or cause me to tear up. I have found a mascara that I absolutely love that provides great volume and works for my sensitive eyes at least. Obviously, we're all different, so this may not work for you, but I want to share what it is with you. It's made by Tarte, and it's called Lights, Camera, Action, or Lights, Camera, Lashes, rather. And they also have one called Lights, Camera, Flashes, which is in a gold tube. That works really well also. So I'm going to take this mascara, and what I'm going to do is wiggle it. I'm going to start at the very base of my lashes, and I'm just going to wiggle it up. And I'm going to work on the edges of those lashes, the outer edges, as well as much as I can get into the inner corner. Now normally I would use 2 coats of mascara and I would let it dry in between, but I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. But I think you can see the tremendous difference that an application, if even one application of mascara, will make. A question I get a lot is, do I put mascara on my bottom lashes? And I think that's really personal preference more than anything, but I think again it can help define that eye area. So what I like to do is put it especially on the outer edge, just like we gave added definition to the eye area with a little bit deeper eyeshadow on that outer edge. But I'm going to add it to the outer edge first, and then maybe just a tiny bit toward the inner part of the lashes on that lower area. The thing that makes a huge difference is the type of mascara that you use on those bottom lashes. For years, I would use mascara, and the mascara would end up on my lashes, but it would also end up underneath my lashes rather made me look like a raccoon, which is not a particularly good look. But recently, and over the last few years, I have found a mascara that absolutely makes a huge difference, and no longer do I have that problem. It is appropriate enough called Bottom Lash Mascara. It's made by Clinique, and I'm frankly mystified by why other brands don't make a mascara like this. And I'll show you why it's so different. Here's the brush, and just look at how teeny tiny that brush is. That's what makes all the difference. Dot these lower lashes. I'm just going to dot a little bit of this mascara on the lower lashes, especially the outer ones, as I mentioned, and also go a little bit toward the inner part. Now, this can also be tremendously helpful. You know, the little lashes that we have up here, just on the inner edge of our upper lash line, this works really nicely to get those lashes as well. So I imagine you can see the difference with just a little bit of mascara on those lower lashes. I also want to mention something, especially for those of you who have hooded eyes, and I certainly have hooded eyes as well. Sometimes we're just born with them, sometimes they just develop later in life, but there are some special tricks that we can do to really help that hooded eye area. And when we were talking about eyeshadow earlier, we were talking about using a transition color or mid-tone color in the crease area of the eyes, which is really a beautiful way to go. However, if you have hooded eyes, if you put that eyeshadow just in the crease area, sometimes when you're looking straight ahead in a normal resting eye position, that eyeshadow is not going to show up because the hood is going to come down over it. So the way to handle that is to simply bring the eyeshadow up higher into your eye area towards your lashes. What we're doing in effect is creating a new crease. So in case our regular crease line does not show because of the hoodedness of our eyes, we can basically, with a little smoke and mirrors trick here, create a new crease area. So after you finish putting on the eyeshadow, make sure you check looking straight on into a mirror to make sure that shadow comes up high enough so you can actually see it in that crease area and above that crease area. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything today that we were going to talk about, and I hope you'll stay tuned next Thursday for the next part of our series, which will be part 3. We're going to be talking about eyeliner. And I know that can be especially tricky for many of us because of a number of things that start happening and changing. Sometimes our eyesight may not be as good as it used to be, which makes it a little bit tougher to put on eyeliner, or our hand's not as steady. And then, of course, there's always that change in the texture of our skin in that area, which makes a huge difference in applying eyeliner as well. And I have some tips and tricks for you, and really what I think is a foolproof way of putting on eyeliner. So I hope you'll be with us next Thursday for that. And I hope also that you'll subscribe and become part of our family. Hit that thumbs up icon if you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. And please also feel free to share this video with anyone else you feel that it might help along the way. Until we see each other again, I wish you a very happy and healthy and fabulous rest of the day. Take care.